Okay, good morning or good evening or afternoon, wherever you may be. We apologize for a little bit of delay, but I'm Lisa Berkley, and I'm working with Reed Price, Brianna Lathorpe, Betsy Spano, and Susan DeGaia, who are all working behind the scenes to make this possible. And this is Reaction to Response, a twice-a-month, year-long webinar series birthed through the Charter for Compassion Women and Girls sector in order to inspire and engage people to move from reactive to responsive behavior at the local, national, and international levels in order to create a more compassionate and just world. And just to give you a little bit of background, the Charter for Compassion International is a thriving global network of more than 400 cities and regions of compassion in over 50 countries with nearly 1,700 partners organized in 11 sectors of society. The women and girls sector is the 11th sector. The Charter for Compassion is the document that is affirmed by all of our partners and applied at the center of all decision and policy making for the cities and regions of compassion. Our vision in the women and girls sector is to elevate the work of our partners and our community to improve conditions and advance solutions for global transformation of women and girls worldwide. And also, as you may be aware, we are still in the midst of celebrating Earth Week, and the Women and Girls sector invites you to join us in the upcoming Compassion Games entitled Water is Life, Protect the Sacred Earth Week, which is April 22nd to 30th. And you can go to compassiongames.org and register your name and register with Team Charter Women and Girls. Before I go into introducing our guest, I'd like to go over a little bit of housekeeping. First, this call is being recorded. And if you have any questions during the call, please post them in the question and answer section or in the chat area. Please be direct as possible because I have a feeling with today's speaker especially, lots of questions will come up. And then on the technology front, if you have any issues with technology, go to zoom.us or try to reach us via chat and we will help you. Lastly, you can find us, the Reaction to Response, on Facebook under Reaction to Response or on the Charter for Compassion's home page on the lower right-hand corner. Without further ado, let's get into the call, which is entitled Acting Out, the Critical State of Mother Earth. And our guest today is Hereditary Chief Phil Lane, Jr. Brother Phil is an enrolled member of the Ihanktonwan. Oh, I said it wrong. I'm sorry. Dakota. Say again?
Ihanktonwan.
Ihanktonwan.
Dakota Yankton Sioux tribe.
Okay, beautiful. Thank you. Dakota and Chickasaw nations, and is an internationally recognized leader in human community and economic development. During the past 50 years, Chief Lane has worked with indigenous peoples across Americas, Micronesia, Southeast Asia, India, Hawaii, and Africa. He served 16 years as an associate professor of the Faculty of Education at the University of Lethbridge, Alberta, Canada, between 1980 and 96. In 1982, Chief Lane founded Four Worlds International Institute. As well, he is the chairman of Four Directions International, First Nations Solar, Compassion Games International, and is a founder of the Global Trustee of the United Religions Initiative. He's also been the recipient of multiple awards and recognitions. But I feel like this list, your bio goes on and is so rich. I'm going to invite people to go to our website to learn more about your amazing background. Before we actually turn over to you, I'd like to just discuss a little bit more about the purpose, as we said, of Reaction to Response, or R2R as we've been referring to it, which was birthed from a conversation in the women and girls sector about how do we switch to building a more compassionate world and this amazing precipice we're on. So I'm going to just do a switch to a very short video of you, Phil, because I think it really sums up beautifully what much of the work we are doing is about. Hold on one moment. All right, share screen. And here we go. Uh-oh. Maybe we won't be sharing this. Let's see. Okay, here we go. Technology.
Question. How in the world could a creator that could create a galaxies upon galaxies. We're on the edge of this galaxy. It's 26,000 light years to the... And there's many galaxies. And the space between the galaxies are bigger than the galaxies. That's traveling at 186,000 miles per second. I always wondered to myself, how could a power of such magnitude, if I call this power the most holy of wisdom, I'm forced to admit the very well springs of wisdom have been created by this power. When I call this power the quintessence of knowledge, I'm forced to admit the very well springs of knowledge have been created by this power. We call it something sacred, moving beyond you. So how in the world could something so powerful only send its truth and its light, the truth and light to one people, to one place in history? It doesn't make any sense. Especially since the center of the universe is everywhere. So, from my perspective, all tribes and nations have had spiritual teachers, spiritual people from every part, guiding us one step at a time. Renewing the spiritual teachings always. Bringing those social teachings that are needed for this time and place. Because now we're at a time where it's been prophesied we're coming into this global civilization. And I can hear it. The death pangs, death cries of an old, outworn system dying. It's in its death throes. It is. It's not wannabe. It is in its death throes. This is the time you got to be careful. As you know, I've been around animals. When they're in their death throes, in a state of denial, in a way, struggling, that last thing, they're very dangerous. But also, if we listen carefully, we can hear the beautiful sounds of the birth cries emerging everywhere of a new springtime, a new day, a new time in which we'll fully realize who we truly are, that each of us is a sovereignty, ancient, imperishable, and everlasting. And also recognize we're all part of one holy human family with one holy power.
Okay. And with that, those amazingly beautiful words, Phil, thank you.
Thank you. It's wonderful to be here with you, Lisa, and to be here, especially at this incredible historic time that's unfolding everywhere all at once.
So earlier in our conversation, we were speaking about the role of compassion. Would you like, and what the role of compassion plays in this transformation that they're in?
Yes. So, as we discussed this over the past week, I took the time to go back into Greek and into Arabic and into different languages to look up and find in Hebrew, to find the word compassion, to see its meaning. And of course, it has this meaning of feeling for others. It also refers to having a pity, a feeling, compassion was actually pity there. And it reminded me very much of a word, actually two words. One we'll put on the screen in a minute, but one word is ushika. Ushika is a word I heard my grandmothers and grandfathers use many times when someone would do something that may be considered bad or looked down upon in mainstream society, judged. But they would say ushika. And that word, the closest I could think of is a concept in Christianity where when Jesus was on the cross and he said, "Forgive them, Father, for they know not what they do." So the term ushika means kind of a poor thing, but it means someone who's spiritually immature, spiritually just doesn't understand what they're doing, let's say to Mother Earth, spiritually is mature and don't understand how they're treating other human beings. They don't understand there's only one human family. And that's where the word ushika comes in. Now there's a second word, and that's the word for compassion from the Dakota language, wo wa umshida. Actually, there's the H is not there, but that's the sound, so people can hear this full sound. Wo, wopida, for instance, it's Thanksgiving, so this wo sound. Wo wo, wo wa, ushida. This means this means not just compassion, but it's the compassion we have on our heart and how we treat other people. Mm-hmm. So it's not just, this word compassion is not just about this is feeling, it's taking action. Mm-hmm. So this is taking action in terms, when I called my dear Tonk Shi, face spotted eagle, to ask her about this word, because both my mom and dad went to residential schools. My mother was Chickasaw, my father, Ihanktonwan, Dakota. I didn't get a chance to learn a lot of the Dakota language. My father taught me various words, and I learned songs and so forth. So I always go to my dear sister to ask her the meaning of words. And she always treats me with wo wa shida, meaning she always treats me with compassion. I never feel ever from her that me asking this question that she is so rich in, she knows so much about, there's any sense of judgment to me, where we see sometimes when somebody knows something and others don't know something, they don't treat them with compassion. Mm-hmm. And of course, in being a good relative, we have our relationships, both hunka, those are people we spiritually adopt in our lives, and those people who are blood relatives. My grandmother, Ella Deloria, said the most wonderful thing you can be as a Dakota is to be a good relative. So being a good relative, core to that, honoring that sacred relationship is to have wo wa shida, compassion for one another. To feel compassion, not just compassion as a feeling, but then to act on that compassion. You know, someone doesn't understand something, someone needs help, someone's lost a loved one. To have that feeling, compassion, but to act on it and treat them with compassion. So compassion is really this emotional, conceptual, spiritual power. Heals people. You know, when you look with compassion, with so much love to the bottom of somebody's soul, because you feel and you act for them with compassion, that has an impact on that human being. And so having that feeling is so important. And that's why the other word I talked about, ushika, realizing, you know, so somebody's ushika, they may even be hurtful in their behavior, but when you realize they're simply spiritually immature, you think of that when we view, many people view, and a growing number are viewing, are understanding the most important thing in this life is developing spiritual dimension of their lives, spiritual dimension of who we are as human beings. So when you encounter somebody who may have great physical wealth, but they're ushika, they're spiritually immature, they don't have the spiritual dimension of what really this life is about, is growing our spiritual arms and legs and eyes and ears when we leave our physical body, just like we did when we were in the mother's womb. Mother's womb, we were growing our arms and legs and eyes and ears, and we didn't need them in the mother's womb. I mean, we weren't taking walks. We weren't breathing air. We weren't using our eyes.
Right.
In fact, it gets pretty uncomfortable there before we come and make the journey into this world.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, we make the journey into this world, and I always call that our womb suit. When we leave behind our womb suit, all of a sudden we emerge in this world, and somebody was kind of stereotypically slaps us on the back. We breathe in that air, and all of a sudden, all those gifts that were being developed in the womb, our eyes, we can see this world. We can touch things, the softness of our mother. Our mouth, all of a sudden, can give us food. We can hear sounds. And we leave behind the womb suit. So the idea of me carrying around my afterbirth on my shoulder, I said to my daughter one time, she says, "Dad, that's gross." And it was actually a ceremony where we would have a ceremony and put that in a tree, and different tribes have different ceremonies, because that was to be honored. And so it is, in this life, we are growing our spiritual arms and eyes and ears and so forth, symbolically. And I call this my earth suit. It's like I had a womb suit. Now, that which counts in this journey is the growing of that compassion, that love, kindness, courage, all those beautiful spiritual qualities, courage, but yet gentleness, unconditional love, the understanding of who we are, that each of us is a sovereignty, ancient and perishable and everlasting. So compassion is really one of those spiritual qualities that's infinite. So there's many different interpretations of even that concept, compassion. But it's the very heart, because when you can feel compassion for someone else, and you can feel compassion of what it's like for over 1 billion people, almost 2 billion people this morning as we're sitting here in this beautiful, I'm sitting here in beautiful British Columbia, White Rock, British Columbia. The air is fresh. I can have a nice glass of water whenever I want to have a glass of water, fresh, clean water. Of course, it's bottled water now. Even here, we can't use it for but I can have water. I'm living in a home that protects me from the elements. I have food to eat. I mean, to not have these things, to not have a place to send your children to school, to be in the blistering hot heat with no clean water to drink, and really in a state of almost hopelessness. And yet we go there, and I've been to many of those communities around the world, and people have a happiness still, even under those circumstances. So you have a compassion for those relatives, compassion, a feeling, and then you want to take action, to do something about it. Or if you really understand, we're just one human family, and the herd of one is the herd of all. And we're one with all our beloved Mother Earth, the mineral world, the plant world, the animal world, and the human world. We're all related. Then we have a compassion when we see, people, cutting the breast of Mother Earth, drilling holes inside of her and sucking her blood out, putting things inside of her and blowing her bones up.
I assume you're making reference right now to Standing Rock and some of the work that you've done in Standing Rock. And not just about Standing Rock in and of itself, but also the as we spoke about earlier at one point, that there's Standing Rocks all over the place, and that there are still a lot of lessons to be learned. I know that so many people felt disempowered, and you've just now touched on a number of very rich things, we can say. On one hand, the global pain that so many people are in, both, and you're speaking too about interconnectedness. And so, Can you speak to a little bit about the interconnectedness, as you're starting to do now, but a little more specifically about the interconnectedness between the earth and her inhabitants, and how we can help heal the pain and prevent future standing rocks from occurring?
Yes. Well, really, it was the young people of Standing Rock that started this movement. And my father was born in Wakpala, a small community on the Standing Rock Reservation. I have a lot of relatives there. Cannonball as well, which is not too far up to the north from Wakpala. So I really had the opportunity to go and witness what was going on there more than contribute. Although I was able, as a global trustee of the United Religions Initiative, to bring forward a support, quite detailed support from our cooperation circles around the world in 97 countries. As we got a chance to go back there and present this to the circle. And I got a chance to go back there and we brought our totem pole journey. But really, I have to give full, total credit to the people of Standing Rock and those early young people, Bobby Jean, Three Legs, and her whole circle of young people who first ran from Wakpala to Mobridge and then ran to the state capitol and ran to Washington, D.C. And it just was a beautiful unfolding. And I think that now we have around the world, truly, Standing Rocks arising, where people are realizing it's time to stand up to protect Mother Earth. I think it's very important. This is about protecting Mother Earth. Now, these acts of protection, finding those things in the circle where you live, in the land where you live, little things we can stand up for, is so important. Not just those issues like at San Onofre down in Southern California. They want to move all that nuclear waste just a little ways down on the beach, and it's just absolutely, it's a tragedy so great that can happen there, and sure will happen. But it's also in our daily lives. My wife has been the great protector of Mother Earth as long as I've known her. She recycles everything. She's very conscious about what it is we eat, and because this is also a sacred gift, this physical body. I tell you, as you get to be in your 70s, you realize how we must treat ourselves in what we eat, and how we treat the immediate environment. So when we began working on this about 5 years ago, particularly Keystone XL pipeline, Kinder Morgan that's going here through Vancouver, we coined a phrase called protect and restore the sacred. And we call it protect and restore the sacred because we really realize all life's sacred. And I'm going to sing a song at the end of our visit to kind of highlight what that really means. But what I see is we now have this movement, global movement, where people are standing up to protect the sacred, standing up to protect the water. Many Wakoni, water is sacred, water is life. We have people beginning to really be concerned about what's happening to the in global warming in all its dimensions, and they're standing up about these things. Now that is a wonderful thing to do. At the same time, I believe it's time really to have a comprehensive movement, unprecedented, to restore Mother Earth. That is to ensure that any waterways close to us, we begin to clean it up. We begin as soon as possible in a globally unprecedented way to move towards alternative clean energy. So it's one thing for us to talk about as Indigenous people, as First Nations, as First Peoples, as Native American tribes and nations about protecting this Mother Earth, protecting the water. Another thing is to look at our communities and say, okay, are our communities, are our territories, are we moving collectively as rapidly as possible to get free of the grid? That is to create our own energy, to ensure that we have ways to collect rainwater so we can have clean water. There's ways to do that, not very expensively. To use biodigesters. These are small, you might say technology by which you take all your waste, food waste, developed by T.H. Culhane and Dave Randall down at the Patel Center for Sustainability in the University of Florida, Southern University of Florida, where they're creating the capacity for people to use their waste, food waste, to cook, to provide heat. There's so many of these wonderful technologies that we can begin applying to our home. There's so many ways now you can solarize your home. So little by little, collectively, globally, we begin to ourselves move away from those things that are harming us. And one of those, by the way, is, and I shared that in our 16 principles.
I was going to get into that, yeah.
When we're ready,
Okay.
Any comments or thoughts from?
Oh no, I was smiling because I had the honor of reading through and looking through the 16 principles. And hold on one second, I'm just going to this right now so people can get a sense of what it is that we're talking about, the 16 principles. Hold on. Oh, you're probably still seeing. Oh, sorry. There we go. Oh, sorry. We're having some tech issues today. Okay, here we are. These are the part of the idea of the 16.
Yes. Well, let me give you a little history, if I might, about this, Lisa. Back in 1982, we called a meeting of elders from across Canada and some from the United States, from all different tribes and nations. And we asked them the question, what can we do to come out of this terrible depths of our spiritual wintertime? The use of alcohol and drugs, particularly the suffering was going on at that time from the unresolved issues of residential schools here in Canada, where 150,000 children were taken from their parents and just grossly violated. I mean, sexually, physically, emotionally, mentally, culturally. I mean, truly, it was a genocide, a true genocide. That's why Canada refused the wording of certain parts of the statement on genocide at the United Nations. Anyway, in this process of these 40 elders coming together, they talked for 4 days and 4 nights, and literally all the last night we had prayers and ceremonies. And they came from many different spiritual perspectives, many different ways of praying. But the main thing is that they really had a common spiritual base. They really were people who wanted to find the light. They didn't care what the lampshade looked like. And what, in essence, they said to us is this universe we live in is organized according to certain natural laws. And they said the physical laws are easy to understand. If you drive 100 miles an hour into a concrete wall, you're going to get smashed up. If you drink a glass of arsenic, you're going to get a stomachache. If you jump off a 100-story building, you're going to get a headache. And so they describe the physical laws. These are natural physical laws. But they said underlying these physical laws are spiritual laws, spiritual principles.
Yes.
And these spiritual principles are every bit as powerful as the physical laws, and we need to become in balance with these physical laws. And that's where we begin over a process from 1982 to 2015. I mean, from 1982 to 1995 in having 4 major meetings, consult about what are these guiding principles. In fact, the last 2 gatherings we had, there was 500 people at each gathering. And so what you had on the screen before, you can put up there on the 16 principles are in essence what the message is that came from the elders. Okay. So starting from within. So there's 4 principles that just focus on starting from within, because one of the things the elders said is development comes from within, from the individual, from the family, from the community, and so forth, spreading out. So starting from within, that's very key. That and so supporting individuals, supporting families, supporting communities to begin the journey, to start from within. It's not an easy thing to do. Now the second part.
Oh, so just so you know, we got a comment from one of our participants saying that she's lip reading you, and so that's why I went back. So let's see, we'll go back to the shared screen for a minute, and let's see. There we go. I'm sorry to interrupt you. Okay, go ahead.
That's it. Well, let's do working in a circle, starting from within, working in a circle in a sacred manner. We heal ourselves, our relationships, and our world. That's the kind of the beginning of these 16 principles. And each one of these, starting from within, working in a circle in a sacred manner, we heal ourselves, our relationships, and our world. So there's 4 parts of that beginning statement, and there's 4 principles for each one of those.
Wow, that's very powerful, and it really does begin to address the relationship between the individual and our community, because that's really what you're touching on. Hold on one second. I'm going to go back to stuff. Should we go into the 15th? The 15th one, did you want to comment more?
Yes, let's do that. Then do that, and then we can speak from there. So these 16 principle development from within, no participation, no development. One of the ones I think is so important, and I have to continually go to this every day because there's so much going on. It's so easy to get pulled into negative. It's so easy to find ourselves complaining, backbiting, gossiping about people and things that are happening in the world. And so I have to remind myself many times every day, solving the critical problems in our lives and communities is best approached by visualizing and moving into the positive alternative that we wish to create, and by building on the strengths we already have rather than on giving away our energy fighting the negative.
Wow.
It's so important. If a person has 10 good qualities and 1 bad one, look at the good. If a person has 10 bad qualities and 1 good, look at the good.
So that,
yes.
Well, that raises a really interesting question, because given, people, I'll speak for myself, I like to, and I know many other people who really want to be aware of what's going on. And I think there's a balance in a lot between what you're talking about, that we need to also be able to see clearly what the issues are and not run from them and sort of sugarcoat them or say, oh, well, I'll visualize the best and that's all it'll all fix itself. I mean, there's a balance here too, no, about where activism steps in.
Absolutely. And I think that's where this whole idea of protecting and restoring the sacred. There's a time to really know we need to protect, stand up in a prayerful, peaceful manner, but with total faith that where we're going is where we need to go. We're protecting and then restoring the sacred. That has to be balanced from my perspective. And the capacity to do that with love and kindness and compassion is so important. Because without it, let's say if I'm just angry, if I'm just want to fight, then these physical forces we're dealing with will just bring us right in there. They'll give the best excuse ever to with what physical power they have to just destroy it and to find a way to marginalize what you're doing. But it was the standing in prayer and love, and I saw my relatives there at Standing Rock going to Bismarck, and they had a prayer ceremony there at the state capitol, and they weren't allowed to come on the grounds. There was a lot of police there, and before you knew it, they had the police round dancing with them. They went by and shook hands with each of the police, and that's not easy to do when they got to the point where they had dogs come at you, and they had mace, and they did various actions. And that's why the elders kept counseling the younger people, counseling everybody to do this in a peaceful, ceremonial way, because they understood what would happen once we ended up getting violent, or we used language that was not language that was loving, kind, and respectful. That's what people loved about Standing Rock, I think, one of those things. And the young people, the seventh generation.
So one of the questions that came in, and to your point also, is question, so can we apply this philosophy or this belief system to the current situation in which there's a madman with the U.S. nuclear codes? And
well, to me, we have no other choice but to move towards the positive alternative we wish to create, while standing in our strengths and not giving away our energy fighting the negative. I do not know what's going to take for us to wake up as a human family. On certain areas, we've gone over the edge. I mean, I remember my dear brother Anangak from Greenland, an Eskimo from Greenland. Some people say Inuit. He always likes to call himself Eskimo. But 45 years ago, he said, Greenland is going to melt. And it's melting. And just with Greenland, this is very conservative, that means that the water will go up 5 meters. That's over 15 feet globally. Now the Arctic is following, so there's nothing to stop. Greenland is going to melt. The Antarctic is melting. There's calculations this could be up to 25 feet in rising of the seawater. When I was at Rio Plus 20, I had friends in private meetings there. They know this is going to happen. They just are not talking about it because of the tremendous fear it's going to cause. But it won't be long, and we're already experiencing it. Really, if you look deeply at Syria, it was severe drought happening that started this process in Syria. Severe drought. People didn't have food to eat. And now, of course, the greatest destroyer of the environment right now is war. It's war. It's using up more energy. It's destroying the planet more than anything else. So making peace, this whole thing comes from my young days when I used to have dark curly hair and was about 3 inches taller and so forth. And my earth suit was in much better condition. Let's make peace, not war. It's still so key because we have this huge military industrial complex, which we were warned about so clearly by President Eisenhower in one of his major presentations. He just warned against it. And yet, here it is, the largest money maker in the world and making more and more money every day.
You know, you remind me on a couple of things. So my background is in counterterrorism and international policy studies and transitional justice. And I was at a conference, you mentioned Hebrew earlier in Israel, and I was at a conference on counterterrorism. And I forget who it was that was speaking, but I believe he was from the US State Department, and they were showing photographs of all of the terrorists and, you know, telling what the strategies were to catch them and discuss all of this. And I'm listening, and I raised my hand, and I said to him, you know, do you think that, I mean, it seems to me that the terrorists are winning because we're busy trying to run after them to catch them. And they're always one step ahead. Not always, but in many ways. What if we changed? What if we changed our attitude? Because it seems like we're running in fear. What if we change our attitude? We can continue the same actions, go after them because they are a threat to society like cancer is to the human body. You have to do something about it. But what if instead of, okay, we're going to catch you and like destroy you, what if we said, wow, we're going to catch you and embrace you and say, thank you. Thank you for showing us who we do not want to be. Thank you for showing us another way and reminding us the way that we don't want. You can still imprison them and hopefully rehabilitate them rather than locking them all up and shooting them, but shifting and working really on deep healing. And the speaker stopped speaking. He said, okay, we have to take a break. During the break, one of the women came up to me and she said, what are you doing here? We all just want to go out and kill these guys. You actually want to resolve the situation. And then the conversation, when we returned to the room, the speaker said, I want you to know what you're saying is correct. And we're not ready. This was about 10 years ago. He said, we're not ready for that yet. But to your point, and to the questioner's point about how can we shift this, you know, it's embracing with gratitude. And so I resonate very strongly with what you're saying. Yeah.
And there's another concept I think that's so important. On December 10th, 2016, we implemented what we called a global Wopida ceremony. Mm-hmm. Now, the word Wopida, just like any spiritual word, has many, many meanings, and it can be applied in many different contexts. So I'm not saying this is the only way it's applied. Sometimes somebody has made a prayer for, like we had a treaty signing down about Keystone XL pipeline. We signed this international treaty to protect the sacred and tar sands projects. One of my nephews, Galen Drapo Jr., did a beautiful ceremony for us and did a beautiful prayer. And then you have a Wopida when that is completed to thank him. So that's one level. You can feed people. But in essence, again, everybody has their spiritual meaning because, you know, each of us, if something spiritual, it's eternal. It has infinite meaning. But for me, this means that we give thanksgiving at all times, under all conditions, understanding that whatever happens is coming to us for our own perfecting. So it's very important to I think for myself, to remind myself and to give thanksgiving at all times, under all conditions, which is not easy sometimes, and realize that whatever is happening in the world today is moving us towards the fulfillment of the prophecies. It's moving us towards a whole new world civilization. And this is a world civilization where a few people control the many. We're all made to dress the same, or a new world that comes after Armageddon, and only the good people are drawn up to heaven and everybody else falls into a pit of hell. This is about a time when truly we wake up to the full spiritual reality that we're only one human family. Mm-hmm. And the herd of one is the herd of all. Mm-hmm. And we realize with that understanding of oneness that we're all sovereignties, ancient, imperishable, and everlasting. We're all spiritual beings, that we let go of all prejudice. Every bit of this illusion. It makes us feel better than or less than another human being.
Mm-hmm. Right. So there's a couple of questions that have just come in. This is, the question is, Brother Phil, in the White Buffalo Prophecy, which is the video that we started off with, you mentioned being able to feel the birthing process and also the death knell of these current systems. Can you connect the environmental changes you mentioned earlier in this talk with the global rising water levels to this birthing process? And and then the rest of it is, what vision do we hold when we have this incredible, say, irreversible environmental degradation to Mother Earth?
Well, really, we've been given so many opportunities from the Creator. You look back and another thing, we can look back over all these wars that continued unabated from just here in the United States and North America, the Civil War, where hundreds of thousands of people were killed and wounded and maimed. Still didn't get our lesson. Then all those massacres, literally, all over the United States of indigenous peoples. I mean, just massacres. Mm-hmm. Then we go into World War I. And here these are really colonial Christian nations fighting each other over their colonies. Mm-hmm. You look at all those nations who were fighting, they were all Christians, fighting each other over their colonial holdings in Africa or different places in the world. Mm-hmm. So that, the war to end all wars. Mm-hmm. Then within 20 years, we were at it again. And not only at it again, we were fighting everywhere. Mm-hmm. Millions upon millions of people had died. Hundreds of millions of people were dramatically impacted. I mean, I hitchhiked when I was 18 from Walla Walla, Washington to New York and caught a free freighter ride over Europe. So I saw some of the damage done in Europe. I was in West Berlin when it was a separated city. I saw the burned out areas of Hamburg, and I actually slept in bomb shelters that had been converted to hotels. You had this devastation, atomic bombs dropped on Japan. I mean, it was something, never has humanity ever suffered such a global catastrophe. And what do you know? Despite all that, we're right back at it. Vietnam, so many of my good friends were either killed there or came back with tremendous challenges and pain. Well, that wasn't enough. Next thing we find, we're over in Iraq, and then the shock and awe. And then before you know it, we're in destroying Libya. And before we know it, we see Syria, and we see all these other things happening around the world. So the question comes, here we are, we continue right on with what we've been doing. What's it going to take to truly wake up? Wake us up. And I think part of this global warming is a wake-up call. I think, in fact, we have a perfect storm. And for me, we know there has been these cycles where climate has changed. I think we're in one of those, as well as, in addition to that, finally, at least when I was in Paris, they had the COP21. At least there, they recognized for the first time that there was such a thing called climate change, and that human beings had something to do with it. So here we have this collective thing happening. Our economic system is on the verge of collapse. I mean, really, when you think about it, here's an economic system with unpayable debt, truly unpayable debt. So what's the solution? Let's go further in debt. Let's go further in debt, because the world, our society globally, is an addict, addicted to consumerism. And so we've got to keep those stocks moving up further and further with better dividends. We've got to sell people more and more things. In order to do that, we're destroying Mother Earth. This system itself is unsustainable. And so these things like the climate change and, you know, eventual, sooner or later, financial collapse, which will happen. I don't know when, because they've been able to keep kicking the can down around the road. But we can just see that in every nation state in the world, including our own indigenous First Nations and communities, those with wealth have more wealth. Rich are getting richer, and the poor are getting poor. And between rich nation states and poor nation states, rich nation states are getting wealthier, and poor nation states are getting poor. So there's so many dynamics to this, these extremes of wealth and poverty, this ethnic fighting, you know. All this, I believe, is waking us up. And we're in really a period of such rapid wake up right now.
It's true. So one last question, and then just to be aware of time, we have about 6 minutes left, and I definitely want to hear your song. So I'm just going to interject here now before we do this question. So we'll ask this question, and then we'll listen to your music, hear you sing your song. I'm sorry. And while you're singing, we will show you for a bit, and then afterwards we will put on the slide with the information for the after party, which is where we'll switch to a different platform, and participants can actually interact directly with you rather than through me, and ask more questions and get more feedback. So the last question is, do you have suggestions for communicating our positive thoughts and movement in today's world?
Well, I want to add one thing here, and it's actually what this whole program is about. One of the absolutely primary actions or realizations that has to happen is the full and complete equality of women and men. As long as more than 50% of the world's population is being oppressed, we will never, ever have world peace. And I have the great gift of having 5 daughters. And the minute the first was born, I've never, ever again used in my life the term mankind or the study of man in my life. I've always wanted my daughters to understand the eagle has 2 wings, one is man, one is woman, and both of them have to have equal power and respect for the eagle of humanity to fly its highest. So what you're doing in supporting and bringing forward the voice of women, the voice of young people in every dimension of human development is absolutely a fundamental key to what it is we need to move forward in a good way. It is empowering and recognizing the spiritual reality of the equality of men and women. And that's just not some, how do I say it? Anything else than that is simply an illusion. And that's where we have to also realize that there's cultures in which part of our cultures are simply dysfunctional. And wherever women are being oppressed, that part of that culture or that spiritual tradition is sick or dysfunctional.
Well, to your earlier phrase, the hurt of one is the hurt of all, and the honor of one is the honor of all. And so obviously if you're repressing a significant portion of a population, you're suppressing yourself as well. So,
yes.
You know.
In fact, the greatest honor I've ever received a few weeks ago when beloved sisters here in the Salish Nation had a whole day on honoring and celebrating the feminine principle, and they made me an honorary woman. So you know, I can you can call me Sister Phil.
Well, you know, I almost thought about starting this call off with "Good morning, Sister Phil," but
really, Truly.
Next time. Yeah.
Because when you get, as older you get, I mean, when you talk about an elder, they're kind, they're loving, they're compassionate, they're courageous, they're gentle. Who are we talking about, a man or a woman here?
Right. Right.
Really.
Yeah.
And yet, we are great teachers to one another.
Mm-hmm.
So that means once we realize there's one human family, the last thing is we have to let go of every prejudice. I mean, everything that makes us feel better than, less than, prejudice of race, prejudice of sexual orientation, prejudice of somehow gender prejudice, every kind of prejudice, social status. I have more education than you. All this is simply, these prejudices are simply illusions we have to let go of.
Yeah. Very true. Okay. Any more? Well, we have a comment. All wise and compassionate men like Chief Phil can be honorary women, one of the panelists says. I second that. Okay, well, we're now right a minute before 9, but we would love to hear your song. So read if you, go ahead.
This song was taught to me by a dear brother of mine who's just passed on to the other side of camp, Vietnam veteran. And the words very simply say, Wayanki Chinupakile Wakanyalo Wayanki. It says, behold this. It says the pipe is sacred of sacred. So what it's saying is the bowl, which represents the mineral people, water and the earth, the stem, which represents the plant people. All these bundles come with different animal, eagle feathers and so forth. The animal people, they're sacred. When you turn the pipe upward, the bowl upward, you see the mouth and the body. And of course, the stem represents male, the earth, which is the bowl. When you put those together, that's the coming together of the male and female principle, which creates life. And so I'm going to sing that as we complete this. And if I only hear a few verses, that's fine.
Wow, that was very powerful. Thank you. Thank you so much. And we look forward now to seeing you or anyone else in our what we're calling our after party, which is, you can find us at http:// that's bit.ly/CCIR2R. You can also call 646-558-8656 or another number 408-638-0968. The meeting ID is 653-718-545. And if you are calling in from the phone right now and you go back and check your emails with the link to this webinar series, you'll see at the bottom of the page also there's a link to the after party. So we look forward to seeing you all there. Thank you. Thank you, Chief Phil. Thank you so much. There are all kinds of wonderful accolades and expressions of gratitude for your presence and your wisdom. So on behalf of all of our participants and everyone watching now and in the future, thank you. Aho.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.